Hello and welcome to the Summer of Self-Love. I'm your host, Mia Saenz. And in this episode, you get to meet Jodi Geline. Now, I met her years ago and just adore her. She's another self-love body person that I think is pretty profound in today's world of coaching because she has a gentleness that I really love that speaks self-love. So welcome, Jodi.
Hi, Mia. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm
Hello.
really glad to have you. Yeah, really lovely. You have a very beautiful disposition about yourself that I've always just really loved. And
Thank
so
you.
it's wonderful to have you. Yeah. So we are jumping into these beautiful questions of how did you discover self-love? And I know that it's a doozy. Some are really traumatic and some are not. But share with us when you recognize that you were reaching out for self-love for yourself.
Well, it's so funny. I remember hearing someone say once, I deeply love myself. And I was like, what does that even mean? I don't get it. I thought I love, right? You can say, oh, I love myself, but deeply love myself. It sounded so foreign to me. Now I know what it means because I deeply love myself. But at that point in my life, even though I had done lots of self-development work, literally since I was 22 years old, I still didn't get that piece at a deep level. You know, the difference between embodying something and just knowing it. I mean, it's like night and day.
Absolutely. And we'll get into that in a few minutes because, yes, that's very powerful and different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until my hitting my lowest of lows in my life that I discovered self-love, and I worked on it because I had to, kind of, in a way, because just briefly, I grew up in a home with a lot of trauma and abuse, and never heard I love you. So, okay, what's naturally going to occur? You don't think a lot about yourself. I felt shame. I felt like I was damaged goods, all those things we make up about ourselves when we, have this happen when we're little, because that's where we learn who we are. And so I actually had gone through a divorce and I got in a relationship because I hadn't learned my lessons yet. I got in a relationship with a very verbally abusive narcissist. And it wasn't until I hit rock bottom with that I remember thinking, oh my God, I am going to have a nervous breakdown. And I don't even know what that means now, but I just remember that feeling like I can't do this anymore. I'm going to break. And once I hit that low and I said, never again. And sometimes we have to hit that rock bottom and say never again. And for me, it may sound crazy, but that was a gift for me to be able to have that happen and hit that place to make me go, okay, that's it. And so that was my journey to love myself. And so that's when I started hitting the road and doing, the self-love work, healing, all of that. That totally turned my life around and my body.
Yeah. You know, I love how you said that, how that threw you about deep loving yourself. Like, what is that?
Yeah,
And really, we cannot know what it is until we get to that level.
true.
Like you, I had a very abusive childhood. I heard the word love, but there was so much abuse that it was very confusing. So I was on the journey of love my whole life, literally, in the sense that I wanted to know what it was. I tried to be the kindest person to people. Um, and and what and I'm sure that saved me, right? Because when you have trauma, you have trauma and it goes deep until you learn how to remove it. But I love that. So when did you first hear or feel that depth of that deep love?
It took a bit. And I don't know if I can say exactly when. I think everything kind of happened at the same time. Well, and I'll tell you, this is how I knew that I had healed. Was I looked 9 months pregnant for 19 years of my life from digestive issues. So everything was in my stomach.
Yeah.
That's what we tend to do, right? We push our emotions
Yeah.
down. And of course it's going to show up in our body. And so when my body went from looking 9 months pregnant to a flat stomach, I knew that, oh my God, I literally just healed myself. And I didn't do anything. I tried, everything under the sun because doctors could never help me. I did all this myself and healed my body. And part of that was the self-love journey. So
Yeah.
it's like, and maybe I could say it was when I knew that I had to start putting me first, and I started to do that, which was a process. But once I started honoring myself first and not doing for someone else at my detriment, I think that's when you really know that you've really like turned this around, and not in an arrogant way. It's just a way of honoring you and like, oh, you're important too.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you are important. I treated everybody else like they were important, but not me. And
Yeah.
now I'm important too, and I matter.
I love that. That's a lot like my journey. And until you've gone to the point where you could feel or hear that you love yourself and then love yourself deeply later on, right? As you grow. It's profound. The first time I heard, I was actually walking through this house. So I think it was only 3 years ago. And I've been studying self-love for 36 years. And so, and I had to come from like you said, we have to hit rock bottom, right? I couldn't even laugh out loud. Um, I've told that story many times, so I don't have to tell it again, but I couldn't laugh out loud. And so I went on a journey how to laugh. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, and it was discovered at a party when somebody said to me, "Wasn't that funny?" I said, "Yes, it was hysterical." And he said, "Why aren't you laughing?" And I said, "I am." And then he said, "No, you're not." And I realized I was laughing on the inside. And so that sounds crazy and insane, right? To be that depleted. I felt like I was like a doll, like a plastic doll. I couldn't feel, I couldn't anything. I didn't know what true love was. Really, I knew my mother said she loved me, my father loved me, but it's a weird journey, isn't it? And the first time I heard "I love you," I stopped and went, "Hey, who's that?
Yeah.
Where
Right.
did
It's
that
so,
come?" Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But it was beautiful. And then now it's like, of course, I love myself deeply.
Yeah.
But I've put in the work. The last 3 years, as a lot of people know from cancer, I became the monk instead of the warrior. I went in to pray and to
Too.
clear
Wow.
stuff away. Yeah. And so it's really beautiful. I love that you said deeply because no one's talked like that so far on the show. And
Hmm.
so it's really important to get to that place where nothing can sway you from who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're so amazing, you know? So
All of
it's,
us individually, yes.
yeah. Yeah.
And yes, I am. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. And you received it. That's good.
And
Yes.
it also, like,
That's vital. Yeah.
yeah, did it take you a long time to learn how to be a receiver? It did
It did.
me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because us women were taught that, well, we got to take care of everybody else. And yeah. And we're blocking our own, we're natural receivers. We're females. We're natural receivers. But
Yeah,
we've been programmed to the opposite, which is crazy.
yeah. It's amazing to think like that, right? That,
You know, I hope I can say this, but this really had me get it at a deeper level once. This was many years ago. I heard this woman and I tried to find her interview again, but I couldn't. So she was a Russian woman and she did this hour-long YouTube and she talked about, the difference between males and females and how males are the givers, women are the receivers. And one of the things she said was, like they have a penis, we have a vagina, like that's receiving. And I was like, wow, that makes such sense.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, I just thought I'd
yeah.
put that in
Well,
there.
that's also one reason why our culture thousands of years ago had multiple women because men added on and women take in. And so it's that same thing. Now we've come to the point where we're not having sister wives.
Yeah.
It's just one on one, dude, or lady, or whatever your preference is. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. We have to understand the makeup of the feminine to even know, oh, I need to open up more. I need to blossom. I need to receive in a different way.
Mhm. Yeah. And,
Receiving,
and, and, speaking of feminine, like, I'll tell you, like, part of the journey, which the self-love was a huge piece. It was, in the receiving as a feminine woman, I couldn't move my hips. Like, of course I can move my hips, but I mean, like, I wasn't fluid. I was tight. I was rigid. And I didn't do anything different other than heal the emotional body, the thought patterns. All of a sudden I could move my hips and I was like, wow,
yeah,
it's amazing how what goes on here goes right to your body.
that is amazing. Just like when I couldn't laugh out loud, right? And you couldn't
Yeah.
move your hips.
Yeah.
So wild because as women, we naturally do move our hips, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're hips, men are upper body.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about receiving because this hasn't been discussed on the show, and it is vital for women to learn to receive. And then we'll also get into your favorite self-love tips and tools, and this might be one of them. But how would you support someone in receiving?
Step back. Just literally, like, say, even with if you're with your man, spouse, whatever, um, just step back and see what that feels like. Just be in that energetically, right? And you can do it a little physically, and just step back and allow what happens in front of you to happen and see how that masculine energy responds to the feminine energy.
Mhm.
And then just, like, resist, because
Mhm.
we're so programmed to be in that do instead of be. So it's
Mhm.
really being in the be mode and the receptive mode. That's being is in the receiving mode instead of trying to manipulate or push or make force. And again, you can be in silence and step back like this and
Mhm.
just see what happens. See what comes your way. Like, just start practicing in that and just see. And then another thing is, like, if someone wants to give something to you, say yes, thank you, instead of, oh, I don't know, it's okay, I don't, right? Start observing how many times you do that. And right, we've all done it.
Yeah. I love that because when we are practicing like being open and receiving, we also have to train ourselves how to gracefully accept things. I didn't know how to accept anything, literally. It took me a long time. I was probably one of those that would be like, well, that's not really for me. And, that's at the bottom of the self-love totem pole, literally,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And to be able, I remember actually retraining my brain in a conversation like we do in so many things to set new patterns and new awarenesses. Um, Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time because my voice center, whenever I was thrown, my voice center would close off and I couldn't speak. And so when that would happen, because even getting a gift for some can be traumatic. I'm one of the biggest gift givers because I believe it's part of receiving, it's part of more, it's part of manifesting, it's part of gratitude. So whenever I make a sale, I often send my girlfriend something and I'm like, let's get on Zoom and have fun and party, and whatever it is, talk and chill and so even I had to learn that some people can't, because see, I went from not being able to receive myself to then having to witness some of my younger friends who are brilliant in all this work too, have to be like, wow, with others, I just couldn't accept that. But with you, it was easier. And it threw me to realize everyone's at a different level, even on gift giving, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing that is probably programmed into us very little about don't take that, no thank you, or whatever, to the point where we don't give to ourselves. So they do go hand in hand, right? The idea of even accepting a gift or a compliment. Compliments are so important for us to practice. I remember in junior high, I was at a private school, and um, one of my close girlfriends, they were incredibly wealthy. I mean, I'm talking about, we lived in Los Angeles, so the school was in Beverly Hills. So we drove like an hour to school. But one of my girlfriend, we were way out on the suburbs. We didn't live in the big old houses. And my mother said to her, "Your home is so gorgeous." And the way she responded, I've never forgotten that. I was what, 13 and or 12, something like that. And she said, "Thank you so much. We really love it here. It's really been, wonderful for us." And I thought, what an amazing compliment back, right? Or a response to a compliment instead of saying nothing or thank you or uncomfortable, but just be in the joy of expression, right? Of gratitude. I've never forgotten that. Never
Yeah.
forgotten that. Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Receiving is a massive part of self-love. It really is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I've also practiced with chanting on receiving. I am infinitely abundant and I receive everything good, things like that, to the point where I could then be able to receive. But
Yeah.
it took the programming. So no matter where anybody is, they can get to where they want to go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You can even say, walk around the house, say, oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah,
Literally, it's practicing that receiving.
it is, isn't it? And,
Hmm.
and I think it's really good because when people, just like when you're dating, right? It's the same thing to know what you're going to say so that you don't spew your old trauma all over people, right? It's
Hmm.
it's interesting that as we get older, we have to reprogram or reparent ourselves. But
Hmm.
it's also beautiful because then we get to develop the being that we want to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
It's
that.
funny you say that. I feel like I should tell you this story.
Yes.
So with men, so I had a lot of shame. I had, sexual abuse as a child. So I couldn't look a guy in the eye. And here I am as an adult, and I pass a guy up and he smiles at me, and I look at him and I smile and I immediately look down.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize I was doing it. One day I realized, oh, yes, I smile, but then I look down. It's like, ooh, right? Body language, that's
Mhm.
shame.
Mhm.
Still there.
Mhm.
And so I would literally be aware, and so I would look him in the eye, and every once in a while, it still looked down. Now I'm like, hi. And I could just see, like
Mhm.
that's receiving too, because, and giving, that's
Yeah.
an exchange. But it's like getting past that still, just the subtle little energy there
Mhm.
yet
Mhm.
of that shame that I had to realize and see and shift.
There
So
is a huge uncomfortableness with people and eye contact. It's beautiful that you pointed that out because some of it we learn to shift that in mirror work, right? And some of it we have to retrain ourselves, like you're saying, we have to experience it. And it's funny, I don't know if you heard this when you were a kid, but I always heard about, well, you're going to be crazy if you're talking to yourself when you're older. Some people, they just, when they're older, they just have conversations with themselves. And I grew up hearing this and thinking, thinking when I came into this line of work, am I going to go crazy? That's why when I heard the "I love you," I'm like, who said that and what's going on? Just really is like, but really the best relationship we have. And I remember hearing this too and going, that sounds like a bunch of shit, excuse me. But when you hear you're going to be or you want to be your own best friend, and I'm like, the heck I do.
yeah.
And now I so get it, right? It's like you could plop me in no man's land or someplace where no one is. And I think I'd need a dog or a cat, my dog or cat. But I would be okay. I love humans, but I've also developed on a necessary level to enjoy my own company, sometimes too much. You know.
I'm that way too.
So there's a happy balance there, right? But
Well,
it is,
and on an energetic level, when you do love yourself and take care of yourself and say, I love you and all of that, you're putting that out, right? Everything is energy. So you're putting that out. And what are you going to get back? You're going to get back that same stuff
yes.
from someone else in your life.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's just the way, period, we manifest, right? We give our blessings or our gratitude for what we're receiving. We look for more so that it keeps flowing. That's the same thing with ourselves and with others, right? We want to have that beautiful natural. I try not to speak too spiritual woo-woo, but I'm going to here. We have that natural flow, when it comes and it balances us.
Yeah. Energy is everything. Everything's energy. I
Yeah.
see energy. I'm clairvoyant,
Yeah.
so I see a lot of things.
Yeah.
And one of them is energy. We are
Yeah.
energy.
It's remarkable. Yeah, it's beautiful. All right, share with us what your self-love tools are that you love to have either people do or you love to do yourself or both.
Yeah. So some of the things we talked about already. And you mentioned mirror work. I love mirror work. It is so powerful because you're actually speaking and looking at yourself and looking into your soul. And yeah, that is probably, I find, one of the most powerful things.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned is, I mentioned before, is taking care of yourself first. It was a process. So I literally had this 30-day thing. Actually, my friend told me, she goes, for 30 days, I want you to say no to everything and just take care of you and put yourself first. And so I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that, And I know it sounds crazy now, but at the time, this was one of the things that I did. And it's a really good practice of self-love, because otherwise you're depleting yourself.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I remember I went to an event, and I don't know if we have time to tell this story, but I
Yeah.
will. Okay. So I was at an event, I'll do this in a nutshell, and this guy was up in front, and I had this clunky old computer. This was years ago, many years ago, and I had this clunky old computer, but his battery died, and he's like, does anyone in the audience have a battery? I have a plug-in. My battery died. He was going to do his presentation. We were almost out of time for people to present, and nobody in the audience helped him. Nobody. And I sat there, and I'm like, don't help him. Don't help him. Don't help him. I was literally, because I'm supposed to just take care of me. I had this clunky old computer that had no battery level left, and it was really slow and clunky. And so anyway, still no, like, minutes go by, nobody would help him. And I kept saying to myself, do not help him. So then I'm like, here, you can use mine. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't believe nobody would help him. It was so weird to me. And so anyway, so then it's my time to go up there. And so of course, my battery had died, it went out. I had everything up and ready to present, and we're short on time. And it takes a really long time for things to load and everything. And so I plugged mine in. I had a hard time. I was nervous. And then I was fumbling, and it was a disaster, a disaster. And so I couldn't do anything on the PowerPoint. I just spoke. But of course, when you're in that, like,
Yeah.
stress space, you can't speak. This things just don't come out well. And I'm in my head. And so when I was done, I went out, and I was going to go to the bathroom, and somebody came up to me and he goes, you need self-confidence. And he was ripping on me. And I just went and I cried, and it was horrible. And I was like, there I go. I didn't take care of me. My challenge was to put myself, and it's like, okay, yes, I like helping, but there I did it at my detriment.
Mhm.
So I needed to see that. here I was trying to help someone, but so that was like, so focusing on you and doing a 30-day practice of that and see if you can get through it and don't do what I did, like it starts to turn everything around.
Yes.
You focusing on you first and not having something happen. And yeah, I paid a lot of money. I traveled to California, it was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's a big lesson.
It was a big lesson.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's a hard lesson, right? Because the thought of sharing your cord was just such a loving thing to do.
Yeah.
And you also sort of knew, or you realized after you did it that, uh-oh, I needed that power. And interesting that it was a power, right? That you needed to get your
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
going,
Good point.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Whoa, I gave away my power.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
You
That
know,
is a good point.
I had a weird experience about a year and a half ago when I was struggling with when cancer came back at one point, and I had a realization that one of my friends I was just taking care of too much, just too much. And so I heard, I'm not going to die for you. We hear lots of things when we're going
Yeah.
through massive healings. And so I shifted that energy. I said, no, I'm not going to die for anyone. I am too important and I love myself too much.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point for me on this brilliant healing, because after that, everything shifted energetically. I got my joy back. The depression left, because people, of course, when you have chronic illness, you have depression, right? And so it was just, I love what you brought up, because I saw it so clearly years later when I was on my deathbed, right? And I wish I had learned that when I was younger, you know? So the fact that you learned that and you went through that is was a very powerful, and then we go back to power again and electricity, right? How they symbolize each other. So yeah,
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. And I think when we learn that space of self-love to that point, right? It's not
Yeah.
about hurting somebody. You didn't let
Right.
somebody die because they needed the power to breathe, right?
Mhm.
It was their own talk, and they should have been organized, right? And
Yeah.
so it
It's
was a
his
learning on,
journey.
yeah,
Mhm.
all the way around.
Yeah. Another thing that I had to do because I couldn't say no. You know how it's hard to say no?
Yeah.
Like that again, you're sacrificing yourself. You're not loving yourself. And so because it was so hard for me to say no, I would walk around the house and I would say no, 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 no. Like I would do it in all kinds of inflections and like really powerful and strong, and that is how I started to learn to say no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like I had to do that. It's practice. It's not natural. It wasn't to me anyway. It wasn't natural to put myself first and take care of me first and then help others, because of
Yeah.
course you have a fuller
Yeah.
cup and all that. Some people will be like, no, 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 I have to take care of everybody. No, you're empty then. You've got to fill yourself up first.
Yeah.
So that was a way that I practiced so I could actually say it and it wasn't foreign or no, it didn't
Yeah.
feel weird or anything. It's like, no, no, that's not gonna work.
I
I can
love
do it
this.
now, but back then,
Yeah.
like,
So your
oh,
third tip is practice saying no. I love that. Wow.
yeah, yeah,
That is really more powerful than we even realize. So
yeah,
as we're setting new patterns, right? In whatever we want to do, the I
yeah,
love you, I love me, or I love you. And the no,
no,
or thank you very much, with a smile and
yeah.
all
And
the
you know what I found when I did stuff like that, and of course, boundaries is another one. But when I did that, it, it's like people respect you more. They don't, because people used to walk all over me. Of course they did.
yeah.
I was a people pleaser. I was codependent. And so when you start honoring yourself, you get much more respect. It's amazing.
Yeah. And that's the energy that we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Everything's energy. So that's the energy that people feel. And
Yeah.
that's really, really powerful. When we get strong and in our energetic space, there's really no stopping us. I
Yeah.
had an experience like a week or two ago. The electricity kept going out in Miami. I'm back in Washington for the summer, but in our place in Miami, and my husband just lost it. And I'm telling you, he should have been a giant because he's like, he has a loud voice and he's got these big hands and big feet. I mean, he's perfect, but for somebody who's only 6 foot, probably should have been 6'5". He's like big. And so it's scary to me at times being 5'3", And so I just sat there and I watched him and I heard go within. And so it was like being in a storm and finding the calm. And so I just went in very quiet, and it was so weird to know that that was there and that I was inside this safe space. And it's not like it was anything other than I just really didn't want to deal with it at the time. It's not like he was scaring me to death or anything like that, which doesn't happen. And so it was incredible because that energy changed his energy. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And that was something that I was unfamiliar with when he'd have an outbreak for some reason, like we all do. We don't always turn around and say, "Hey, sorry, I did that,"
Yeah.
But it was really cool to learn wherever energy faces us, it's always amazing to witness it.
Yeah.
But then also to witness it where the other person changes because you're energetically being how you know you want to be.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I want to add something as you're saying that too, because the energy you put out shifted around what was around you.
Yeah.
So with the no and the taking care of yourself, the reason that I say 30 days, this may help people, is it's like, if you're here and the pendulum swing, the way you want to be is here,
Right.
but what's important to do, and this is what I did, is I swung it way over here. No, 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 the taking care of me only. So that way I could end up here.
Right.
Because this was so foreign to me that I had to go all the way over here in order to come here.
Right. You had to find your balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be extreme. Don't be afraid of it. Don't, and it's a process, allow that to be, but that will eventually bring you back to this place that you're in strong stance, you're in your power, you're receiving, you're able to be in the world where you're important too, and you're honored, and so is everyone else.
Right. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And we're out of time. This stuff goes by so fast. I love it.
I know it did.
Thank you, Jodi. It was really lovely to have you here.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was great to be here. Thank
And
you.
thank you all. Yes. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you in another episode.